What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply Walk the Talk. I'm your host, JoshuaJHolland. And today we've got a very energetic, fueling podcast with a couple of guests. Today we have on the show Devon Price and Peter Bayne. Devon is a scientist and engineer. He studied at UC Berkeley and earned 2 master's degrees from MIT. He has a strong background in business and healthcare, working at Stanford University and Massachusetts General Hospital, building and improving systems for care delivery. He is passionate about health and fitness and has been an avid CrossFit athlete for over 10 years and has 3 young boys at home. Mr. Peter Bayne has spent 15 years building brands, businesses, and communities. He has created successful enterprises in the ultra-competitive hospitality sector, from concept to operations. He's a father and a husband with 2 kids and lives in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago, Devon and Peter began the process of creating Kenetik, a drink that provides a healthy dose of the same ketone molecule our bodies create during a carb-restricted or fasting diet, but made from plants and very delicious. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Gentlemen. So we got Peter and Devon. Thank you for sitting through that nice little intro. It kind of feels like the like going to a movie theater and watching like all the trailers for the movies coming out in the future.
I like the hay bale the most. I want to hear
Yeah.
more about that.
Oh yeah, that was actually in the outskirts of Budapest. A lot of it actually was there because I was working with a film company there to help me do some content creation. And yeah, that was an interesting day because I was driving a tractor and I was in this this regenerative farm project that they had built there. And yeah, it brought me back to my Oklahoma roots. So yeah, it was fun.
Farm work is no joke, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll make it strong for sure.
Yeah. So so obviously with that intro that I gave, you guys are doing some serious stuff, and I had the great fortune of being able to try your product. And this product, as I described in the intro, is called Kenetik, and it's a ketone drink. And obviously, I think for the people who don't know what ketones are, I mean, we should describe that a bit. But let's talk about how you guys got started in all that, because I think it's very fascinating. You guys are brothers and you're working together to create this amazing company. And I can definitely say I allowed a couple people to try my drink, and I very quickly realized the difference between your drink and some of the other ketone products out there. And I had to quickly kind of scale back how much I gave away because everybody was like, "Hey, do you have more of that?" And I'm like, "Well, I do, but it's not cheap, you know." So anyway, with that long preamble, let's just kind of dive into your backgrounds.
We hear that a lot actually, as people are sampling it out to friends and family members, and it's just like, actually, I'm out, so no more for you. The rest is just for me. So that's a frequent story we hear. Devon and I both, grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, in D.C. specifically, actually, for most of our lives, and have always had this bond and friendship, and have been very busy, active people our whole lives, entrepreneurial, and on my side, and him pursuing all of these degrees. And I just remember when he was like graduating from MIT, he's like, "Yeah, I just decided to throw in an MBA because why not?" I was like, Jesus, totally
Right.
different wavelength than what I'm able to deal with. And I was in the food and beverage industry and starting to build brands, custom built brands for neighborhoods, working with real estate developers, building large format spaces that not only did food and beverage, but would figure out how to build in community engagements, whether it's with offices or parties. We do art shows, we do concerts, we'd figure out ways to just, attract the community and build this third space away from work, away from home. So that is just to really say that we're both extremely busy, motivated, and we have the same 24 hours in a day that everybody else has. And we were always looking for a way to get more out of the day, to have a little bit more energy, especially when you have kids. You need as much. You're on no sleep and your brain is suffering, and you still have to conquer all the things that everybody else does throughout the day. And if you're a business owner, well, it's double that actually. And so we began, researching into health and wellness, different workout protocols, different diets, and listening to podcasts. And that's really what, I think even starting 10 years ago, listening to podcasts, I learned a ton about entrepreneurship and health and wellness. And that's where we first learned about ketones, this to me at the time, and Devon, this unknown energy source. Like, I didn't know what the heck ketone was. I didn't know that's what happened, that you can consume if you shut off carbs, and you're only on a fat-based diet, your body is converting that fat, whether you're consuming it now or it's stored up, it's converting that into ketones in your liver, and your brain uses it. They know that your brain prefers ketones to everything else. Your muscles use it, your heart uses it, and then it's got all these other ancillary and signaling benefits that we'll dig into later. So it was just fascinating to learn that, hey, there's this other fuel source out there. And it makes you feel great. It gives you more focus, more clarity, more energy. I was just getting more accomplished throughout the day. So we ended up doing the ketogenic diet and trying it out. And it was hard, man. I got keto flu, it was bad. I was like, what am I doing? Is this really good for me?
Right.
But once I got beyond that, I was like, damn, I feel clarity. I feel fantastic. I'm ready to jumpstart the day. I was recovering faster at the gym after doing some grueling weightlifting sessions. And I was actually, working out. I'm 42. And so at the time I was like 39, 40, working out with a bunch of 25-year-olds. And I was like dead in a bloody heap in the corner of the gym at the end of some of these workouts. And now all of a sudden I'm able to keep up and finish with these guys. And it wasn't just because, all of a sudden I grew a ton more body mass. I just was able to recover faster. And I could notice those benefits right away. But we always kind of struggled being family men. And me in particular, I've got a really bad food allergy to dairy. And a lot of these fat-based diets are have butter, cover everything in butter. Cheese is a staple of the diet. Dairy is a staple of the diet. And so I couldn't do that. So it was just a lot of animal fats that I was consuming instead. And with 2 kids and a wife who's a vegetarian, that wasn't going to fly for very long because, we're preparing 3 different meals a night. And there's got to be a better way because, that's not an efficient use of time. And that's when we really began to learn about exogenous ketones. How can you get this ketone energy without having to be on, a carb restricted fat-based diet or a fasting diet. And that's, there's a bunch of different types of exogenous ketones out there right now. The first one we discovered was MCT oil. Yeah, I mean, people have seen that in the bulletproof coffee. And I remember first, my business partners told me about it. He's like, "Lo, you take a stick of butter, you melt it in your coffee, you blend it up." And I was like, man, a stick of butter in the blender, that's 20 minutes to clean that blender. But he would drink that down and he was swearing by it. And but I couldn't do that. The butter coffee and the MCT oils, if you have too much of it, it can really ruin your day. Really, really ruin your day. So yeah, even a teaspoon too much, and you can be in a lot of pain, and you're not sitting at your desk working, you're sitting in a different office. And so it's that was kind of out for me because it just, it was too painful sometimes. Then there's things called BHB salts, and that is the actual BHB ketone, which stands for beta hydroxybutyric acid, but it's bonded to a ton of salt. And the problem there is that it's got so much salt attached to it. To get an effective dose of the ketones to feel the benefits, you're just consuming way too much salt. And it also, with that, causes a lot of GI distress and other issues that can kind of ruin your day too. Some of those we found too were laced with caffeine. And it's just like, okay, when you're throwing caffeine in this, I'm supposed to be feeling the benefits, the energy boost from the ketones and the benefit of that. But it's also, got 600 milligrams of caffeine in it. And, now my heart's racing, my head is thumping. I'm not feeling that clear, calm focus that I was getting before. So moved on from the salts. Then we discovered there's ketone esters. And this was actually discovered in partnership with the military and through a DARPA study, it's called. And they basically figured out how to have the BHB bonded in an ester bond with another molecule called 1,3-butanediol. When you have this 1,3-BD, you consume it and your body converts that into the BHB. So you get the BHB right away, the ketone, and then this conversion. So it kind of elongates the length of time that you're getting ketones absorbed into your system. But because of this ester bond that's there, you don't want to drink esters. Like, sounds like gasoline and it tastes like gasoline. And you can lace it with all the blueberry flavoring you want, and it's still blueberry flavored gasoline.
Exactly. People's faces when they try it, because I've I think it's probably quite obvious. I try a lot of these things, and I always have to warn people. And I'm always shocked because some people are kind of like me that are like, oh, it's not so bad, especially if you're going to get some kind of benefit from it. Let's face it, it's kind of like alcohol in general. I think most people tolerate the flavor of most alcohol, like beer and liquor, because of the benefit that they hope to gain from it, right? Yeah. But let's face it, like, nobody's really loves the flavor of some of these things. And I feel like the esters are like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We should really do a side-by-side tasting where we just got like cameras panned on the person's face and be like, okay, like this person's going to drink Kenetik and this person's going to drink the ester, and just watch the facial reactions.
Oh, that's a good idea, actually. I might have to do that for you guys.
We might have to try it out. Like, we'll just, go find people on the streets of New York and be like, hey, can you do this side-by-side testing with us? And I think it'd be funny to see. Like, my wife right now will not like trust me on anything that I give her anymore, because I was like, just try a little drop of this ester.
She's the guinea pig.
Yes, yeah. It's like, and so that's over. There's no more drinking ketones or new ketone formulations for her. She's like, you tricked me with that ester. I'm never going back. But she loves Kenetik. And so what we did differently with Kenetik is that we were able to find those two compounds, the 1,3-butanediol, that is actually made in a fermentation process from plants. It's all made from plants. And the BHB that is molecularly identical to the BHB that your liver creates when you burn that fat and turn it into that BHB energy, without them being in the ester bond. So they're both free. And that allows us to actually make it taste really good. We're able to add some sweeteners into it, non-glucose based sweeteners. We add some fruit into it that was actually made from fruit that's dehydrated and has the fructose removed from it. And so that's how we end up with this extraordinarily effective. It's as effective, if not more effective, than the esters, and really great tasting. And when my wife stopped being the guinea pig, I found one in my 8-year-old, and that was the challenge. It was the life cereal challenge, I called it. His name's Micah, not Mikey, but we would be testing different formulations and flavors, and like, okay, Micah, come try it. And he'd be like, and we'd have like 3 different variants out there, and he'd be like, tick, 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 this one's the best. And I was like, well, we all agree, and we go around, but like, he was always the one that was nailing the flavoring for us. So it's flavor matters. And as you said, like, sometimes some people are willing to drink nasty stuff if there's some sort of outcome they want to get from it. But why not have something that's really good and healthy for you and it tastes amazing, so that you can have it several times throughout the day and feel the benefits of it and all that. And that's what we've accomplished with Kenetik. We have the best of both worlds. It's the most effective at raising your ketone levels, and it tastes the best out there in the market around the world. We tried everything.
Yeah, and for those that are only listening, that's mostly Peter talking. We do have Devon on as well, as I described in the intro, and he pointed out to me before we started recording that he had lost his voice up until about 5 minutes before we started recording. So he's not shy. I can promise you that. But like, for the people that also want to hear from you, Devon, what is your piece to all of this, and kind of like what were you doing along the lines of helping to discover this?
Oh man, well, Peter and I were we're discovering it kind of in parallel, and once we had figured out how to make Kenetik, it was nice. We had an opportunity. It was sort of a combination. I think much of success in life is a mixture of luck and resilience. And we had the opportunity to be connected with Richard Veach, who is sort of known as the godfather of ketones. He's at NIH and studied ketone and ketone metabolism for 30 years. It was through him that we learned about our supply partners. But once we had created this, we were content. I was content to just have a lifetime supply for myself because of the way it made me feel. And I stayed interested in it because there's so much interesting science around ketones. And I guess my mind is just sort of geared in toward science and problem solving. And so I lost myself in the research that was out there, and have since even initiated a number of studies with Kenetik itself, because there's just so much behind it with regard to the the physiological effect, the benefits, and we're learning more and more every day about it. So so that's kind of my passion around Kenetik.
Yeah, I will say this, because let's face it, right? Like nowadays, people should have a healthy skepticism in what's being promoted, and like there's a lot of content creators like myself out there, and I do try loads of things, and I can say with the utmost integrity that this is by far the best tasting ketone drink that I've ever tried, right? And what got me into the idea of trying ketones is because I kind of understood it. I like to take complex concepts and then dumb them down or simplify them. This is kind of the reason why I even started this show, is to be able to take these complex situations and ideas and then kind of deliver it in a very simplified form. That's why it's called Simply Walk the Talk, right? And so the way I describe it usually is, we all know of fuel sources in the body, three main fuel sources, which is, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, right? And most people can kind of wrap their heads around that. It's pretty simple. And then you start talking about ketones, and this kind of this fourth fuel. As you mentioned, it's kind of a newer concept, and people are kind of starting to learn more about it. And I ended up, while I was on tour recently with Roger Waters, I decided to get this book to start reading up on it so I could explain it a little bit better to him, because to be fair, I knew that this would be good for him. He's 79 years old, and he's doing a world tour at 79 years old, having to be on stage and having to have, very good cognitive ability, but also be able to move and perform and like withstand multiple hours, night after night, going on a world tour at his age. So I started introducing ketones to him, and he's like, "Look, dude, whatever this gasoline, kerosene type. I think he called it kerosene, right? It's a mix between ketones and gasoline, right? So he's like, whatever that kerosene stuff is, don't run out of it, because he saw me giving samples out to different people backstage, and he's just like, hey, that's all good, but just don't run out of it. So I was ordering multiples of this stuff, and let's be fair, like it doesn't taste good, right? Some of the products that I was giving him doesn't taste good, and I discovered Kenetik after I got back, right? And I imagine what it's going to be like now when he tries this, so I'm excited that you guys have built this, because it does make it a lot easier. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys also have a concentrate now too, right? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So long story short, I want to be able to get this into the hands of people that do see a benefit, right? And sometimes you don't have to explain in great detail what the benefits are, as long as you know that it's working for you, right? And so after having a nap, like what usually happens when we're doing a show with him is he does dress rehearsal, and then he has dinner, and then after dinner he takes a short nap, 30, 45 minutes. And then I wake him up, we go through a series of stretches, and then he takes his ketones. This is what happens for every single show, right? So I say this only, I guess, to name drop a little bit, but to also let people know that some of the people that are operating at a very, very high level are using things like ketones. And it shouldn't necessarily be a secret anymore. Let's roll it out. And that's what we're doing. And if you were to talk about ketones, a year ago or 2 years ago, the cost of it all and the taste of it all was a super high barrier of entry, right? Like it was super expensive and it tasted like crap. So here we are now. I think there was a thing that Gordon pulled up. It shows the cost per serving, which is way less than it used to be. I think it used to be upwards of like 35, $40 for one serving, right? And now, it's like under $4 a serving. So it's like, yeah, you can spend money on a kombucha, or you can go and get something that's really going to help boost you, So anyway, there's not really a question there. It's just more of a concept or a comment. But I would love for you to kind of, either one of you, to describe what people should expect from trying out a ketone for the first time, because it's not as easy to fast for long periods of time like you described, Peter. That's the hard part. Now it's a lot easier to kind of go, this is kind of like a magic pill or magic drink where you can take it and it's like as if you fasted for long periods of time, right? So like, what can people expect?
Yeah, so since I can't do the keto diet anymore, I do intermittent fasting, and that's my preferred diet. I will do the 16-8 window, so stop eating at like 7, 8 o'clock at night, and pick up again around noon or 2 p.m. And one thing I found that's like really useful about Kenetik is as I'm getting towards the end of my fast, if I'm starting to feel some of the hunger pangs or the hangriness, as they call it. I mean, there's that like lovely Snickers commercial with Joe Pesci where it's just like, what's his name? He's angry. He turns into Joe Pesci. He eats the Snickers, and all of a sudden he's back to this like 22-year-old kid or whatever. But anyway, that's as you're doing a fast, that's sinking in, and it's hard to maintain your focus and your energy level and be productive at work as you're kind of hitting that moment of your fast. And I think as you expand your fast and you're doing a 24 or 48 or longer, you start to move into a different period, but it can be kind of difficult to get over that initial hump when that hunger sets in. And so the one thing that you'll notice, first of all, when you drink Kenetik is that any hunger you're feeling kind of goes away. They've shown in studies that exogenous ketones actually reduces the hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin. It's and that's like, so reducing that reduces this appetite and these cravings that you're having. So it's a really nice way that, like, A, if you're doing it fast and you want to extend your fast, you can do that. B, you're extremely busy. You don't always have time to stop and get your meal in you, or you're just bouncing from meeting to meeting. And that's what kind of that Snickers bar, oh, eat this chocolatey, sugary crap. But instead, what you could have is you could just have a bottle of Kenetik, or you could have some of the concentrate on you. We have lots of athletes that'll just drink the concentrate straight and get the 2 ounces because they're in a rush. I always have like a bottle or two in the center console of my car or by my desk. And so as I'm bouncing from one thing to the next, I don't have time for that meal, or I'm feeling low energy. And I know, like, I'm coming up to a moment where I really need to shine and be on point and make sure my brain is fired up. Drink the Kenetik down. All of a sudden, everything feels better. My brain is starting to enter into a flow state. I don't have any more of these hangry pains going on that's bringing on some crankiness. And I also find that being entrepreneurial, sometimes it's not like you're going to a desk and you've got a boss that's yelling at you. You have to be really self-motivated. And as anybody who's self-motivated, that's working for themselves, or they're out there trying to achieve a lot, like, it can be hard sometimes to keep that drive going, to keep that motivation level high. And I've really found that Kenetik is like a motivation in a bottle for me. Like, it's hard to open up that laptop in the morning and start cranking on, copywriting, or responding to the emails, or thinking about some of the creative assets you need to generate. But I found that anytime I hit that wall, I drink a Kenetik, and all of a sudden I just start going. I start flowing. Everything's clicking. I look back 2 hours later and I'm just like, dang, I just got a lot done. And, it's an interesting thing because I've worked with other creatives as well. Like, my wife is an artist, and she just does, visual fine art. And so it's really hard to have a blank canvas and to figure out what you're going to put on it. And so she runs in the walls all the time. I'm like, just go get a Kenetik, pull one out of the fridge. And then she disappears for 4 hours and comes back. Every time she's like, dang, that shit really works. So we were really having, like, I was like, there's something going on here in your brain when you're drinking this. And so I was like, I asked Devon, I was like, Devon, science guy, let's figure this out. What's going on? And so maybe, Devon, you can talk a little bit about this brain scan study that we did. So we actually discovered what the hell is going on up here that's making, everything easier to accomplish and get done.
Well, but before we do that, and thank you for that, Peter, and Devon, we will bookmark that because I think it's going to be great. But this is around the time when I would love to do a Pomodoro break. So this could be a great time for you guys to shine. You can shine bright like a diamond, or like a Pomodoro. So on this show, I love to sort of break up the monotony of either being in a sedentary state, because I'm standing, you guys are sitting, but also not just the physical sedentary state, but also the mental state of being focused on one topic or one thing, right? And so I would like to break that up, and if you guys could offer something that you can do and that I can do and that maybe our audience can do, that would serve as a good Pomodoro break.
I love that. I love it. All right, so I understand we've got about 30 seconds for this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to propose, being a CrossFit fan for about 10 years, I'm going to propose that we do max burpees in 30 seconds.
Okay. And then we can report back how many we did. Okay. So I'm going to take off the headphones. Gordon is still here. You can kind of, if you're watching, you can look at the screen, of course, and see what everybody's doing. If you're not watching, maybe Gordon can give some color commentary.
Yeah, I was debating on some music or something.
Yeah, I'll be back in 30 seconds, everyone. So here we go.
Who's got the timer?
Gordon's got the timer.
I'll do the timer.
All right, Gordon, you're going to tell us when to go, right?
All right. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. Go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 strong gentlemen doing burpees right now with 20 seconds left. Devon's putting out a pretty strong lead. Josh is close, though. Josh is a little out of camera, though, so I'm counting only when he gets up. You guys are at least 5. All right, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Definitely the most intense Pomodoro so far.
Absolutely. Wow. I couldn't quite the timer because I had you coming through the headphones, so I thought you were counting down 2, 1, but it doesn't really matter. How many did you do, Devon?
That reset my brain. I got 15.
Of course you did. Peter?
I got 16 actually.
I got 22. So you guys both would be well done, gentlemen. Okay, so wow, that definitely resets things, no?
Yeah, that feels better.
Look at Peter's cheeks.
The post-race
Pomodoro.
interview.
Good. Pomodoro.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's carry on what we were about to talk about, Devon.
Yeah. We were talking about how ketones affect your brain. I'm gonna start by talking about how that applies in fitness, and because one of the things that what I love about ketones is that it's a really efficient fuel for your brain, and the functioning of your brain is central to the functioning to your performance in everything else, whether that's physical or intellectual. Because when your brain quits, your body wants to quit. And of course, if your brain isn't working, you can't make connections, you can't solve problems. So I've found that drinking a Kenetik before I do a workout will just keep me fresh, keep me in the zone for longer, because ketones provide the energy that you need to keep your central nervous system firing. Your brain, if you've got glucose and you've got ketones present, your brain's going to suck up those ketones first. They're 3 steps away from ATP in the Krebs cycle versus glucose, which is 9 steps away. So that basically means there are fewer chemical reactions that need to happen to turn ketones into energy than there are for glucose. So it's super easy for your cells to use. Your cells don't need insulin in order to use ketones either. So it's not hormone dependent. And what we found was in a study that we did with Kenetik was that 1 bottle of Kenetik increases your brain activity by 18%, just drinking 1 bottle. It increases the alpha wave activity and the gamma wave activity. And so the alpha wave activity is associated with calm and focus. And the gamma wave activity is associated with problem solving. And so essentially what that means is those 2 things combined, that sort of explains the feeling of being in the zone or that intense productivity and focus that you feel. You ask what can you expect when you drink ketones? It's not a kind of jittery stimulus that you get from caffeine or taurine or anything like that. So you're not going to notice like, oh man, I feel like I'm jumping out of my skin and I want to go run around. It's more of a sort of a clean, calm feeling of sort of alertness and focus. It's like things are working right because your brain has the energy it needs to work at its peak. So that's what you can expect. And one other important thing to note, I think, is that your body, over time, it develops the metabolic pathways to more efficiently use ketones. So if you drink a Kenetik regularly, say once a day for 3 weeks, the impact or the effect of that Kenetik is going to increase over the course of those 3 weeks. It's kind of the opposite of caffeine, actually, where you develop a tolerance and then, you're drinking 5 cups of coffee a day just to feel normal. It doesn't affect you anymore. But Kenetik, the more your body is exposed to ketones, the better it gets at using them. So that's, I think, something really important to pay attention to.
It's really important to understand timing, like when you take it and the intention, right? So like if I want to be on my best when it comes to doing a podcast or talking with someone or doing an interview or whatever, I could take it and allow that to, like I guess what I'm saying is like a person shouldn't think you just drink it and then everything works better. It's like what you apply to it is what I would imagine, right? So if you want to do it before a workout, then you're probably going to get a better boost of your workout performance. But you shouldn't expect a workout performance if you don't go and work out, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I figured that would be important to point out.
Yeah, that's well said. And so typically before any time you want to be at your peak, drink a Kenetik 20 to 30 minutes before.
Bingo.
And that will give your body the ketone energy, the boost of ketones that you need to perform.
Yeah, and I'd say for the athletic side, what's nice about it is a lot of these sports drinks that are out there right now, have a ton of sugar in it and a ton of caffeine. And so not only are you getting the jitters, but your heart rate is really elevating. Like stay in the game, you can't shock your heart rate. You can't have a spike. It leads to a crash. You're done. What's great about Kenetik is it won't elevate your heart rate at all. There's no, when you're coming down from Kenetik, there's no crash because you're always in a calm state. You're not sort of, in this, intense, like if you feel like your heart's bumping out of your chest. And so that's why it's, it's really fantastic, whether it's in the gym or some other athletic performance, because not only do you have extra energy and endurance for your muscles, but your brain is really on point too. And as we all know, for anybody who's competed in any sort of athletic sport, the last 5 minutes of the game is when it really matters the most. That's when you win the championship. And if you are fatigued, if you are mentally fatigued, if you are like out of shape and you're seeing spots in your vision, like you're going to lose because you're going to make a mental mistake, which is going to lead to a critical error. And the other team, if they're in better shape, they're going to take advantage of it. So if you've got Kenetik and ketones in your brain, you're really focused and you're cognitively aware for those last 5, even 2 minutes, you're more likely to win. And I think that's, that's really the benefit. When we first started this, we're like, man, these physical benefits are wild. But as we, progressed, we're like, the cognition is where it's at. And that's why I brought up my wife, the artist, earlier, because, being able to, get into the flow state on demand and to be creative, and whether you're an artist, a visual artist, or a singer-songwriter, to be able to get your brain to be in that flow state on fire so you can put down on paper and create. And I just think for creatives, there's something really, really there that's fascinating, because it's difficult to come up with something original and new these days. Everything's been done. And for somebody who's really a high performer that's focused on that, like we see a lot of people that are buying that right now. We get a lot of people in the C-suite office environment that are like officers that are just really like, high performers dealing with a lot of problems, doing a lot of problem solving, that love Kenetik because they can be on point whenever they need to be.
Yeah. So here's something that I find very interesting. I of course, there's a couple of things that we can dive down, but like one of the components is like when a person is listening to this, I can imagine if I put myself in the shoes of the listener or the viewer, it's like, okay, guys, this is all great. This is amazing. So like more is better, right? So I would love for one of you or both of you to talk about sort of the downsides, right? Like what happens if a person takes too much of this? Is there something potentially negative that can happen if you take too much? What is the contraindications? And then also, do you guys have any cool protocols in stacking this with other things?
Yeah, 100%. So, in terms of um, in terms of taking too much, what's the risk of taking too much? It's true that more isn't always more, and your body actually has, and if you have a healthy metabolism, your body has natural kind of regulation of ketone levels. Your liver modulates that. So it's for a healthy person, it's very difficult to drink too much kinetic, too much ketones, because your body is going to it's going to regulate it. You hear about ketoacidosis for folks who have diabetes, and in particular type 1 diabetes, where that's a big risk, and your blood levels get up to 14 millimoles. That is potentially life threatening. That's not going to happen by drinking ketones. I would be careful. If you do have type 1 diabetes, talk to your doctor about it. But if you're not under the care of a physician, it's not really a risk. That said, more still isn't necessarily more, because for two reasons. The one that I just mentioned, which is your body is going to regulate the levels of ketones, and so it's going to bring it down if you have more than you need. But in addition, you've got now I'm going to qualify this by saying we don't yet have dose response data, but anecdotally, the sweet spot for kind of cognitive function, peak performance seems to be where your ketone levels are between 1 and 3 millimoles. And going above that doesn't seem to have much of a benefit at all, because your brain has access to as much energy as it needs. Your body has access to the energy that it can process. In addition, so the second thing is that the presence of ketones reduces your blood glucose levels. So there can be a sort of a, not lethargic, but a kind of an energy reducing impact of reduction in blood glucose levels if that goes too far. So so all of that is to say that you want to keep your ketone levels between 1 and 3. To do that, say a kinetic in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and 1 in the evening is probably optimal. 1 in the morning is probably enough, or 30 minutes before you need to perform is probably enough for most people. I drink 1 in the morning to get my day going, and then 1 in the early afternoon when I need to stay moving, because it's in rather than having an afternoon cup of coffee, I have a kinetic, and it keeps me going. So that's what I'd say about kind of optimal amount.
And I would love to just interject quickly, because I think it may be confusing for some of the listeners on exactly how to measure that, right? Because the measurement of you just like drinking a bottle doesn't necessarily mean you're getting 1, right, millimolar, right? some of the common ways you have to do that is to do like a blood test or a urine test or a saliva test. I have a lumen device, which is a breath analyzer, that it doesn't necessarily tell you like the millimolars, but it gives you an idea of if you're burning fats versus burning carbs. So like, what are some ways that people could do that if they are curious about knowing where they are?
The best way to do it is with a finger prick test, similar to blood glucose test. Keto Mojo makes a great tester. You can, we've done all kinds of testing, and we do, quality control testing before every batch to make sure that that one serving of Kenetik, it elevates your ketone levels, your circulating ketone levels a certain amount. So you can expect for an average person, 160 pounds, 170 pounds, one serving of Kenetik will increase your ketone levels about 1.5 millimole. So
that's good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's it's difficult to get to 1.5 if you're on a ketogenic diet. A lot of people have trouble getting there. It's equivalent to 1 to 2 days of fasting for that level.
That's really important for people to hear, because again, like I assumed that there's a lot of different factors on the type of person that's taking that one serving, and so maybe it would make their levels differ depending on your lifestyle, right? And like, I'm a person that also practices intermittent fasting, and I exercise and all that stuff. So there's been a couple times when I've taken too much, not necessarily of Kenetik, but of other products out there. And the only downside that I experienced, and so I would explain this to other people, is that I had to run to the bathroom at some point. You know what I mean? And that was kind of the only downside that I experienced. But it is helpful to know what you just mentioned, especially since it's backed by research, is that you can expect a bump, quite significant bump with just one serving. That's important.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yep. And to your point, it does vary by person. It varies by body weight. It varies by activity level, how fast you're actually burning it.
Yeah.
We find that people who are fat adapted or who do intermittent fasting or a ketogenic diet actually seem to have a more pronounced response to it. So, or if you've been taking ketone supplements for an extended period of time as well. And that other point that you mentioned, the GI effects, we haven't had any issues with GI effects, unlike with ketone salts, where if you take more than one serving, you probably end up with diarrhea. Same thing with MCT oils, obviously. Esters don't have that problem. Kenetik doesn't have that problem.
That's great. That's great.
Yep.
Peter, you're being very quiet now.
You're getting all this rich, valuable content out of Devon, so I don't need to interrupt.
No, it's all good. So my other part of that question is like, what are some stacks? Because I'm a person that, like, when I try a product for the first time, I like to try it, stripped away and kind of it's bare bones. But then, of course, I can't help but want to like stack things on it. So, for instance, with you guys' product with Kenetik, I don't know if you're familiar with blue carnitine, which is the methylene blue with a little bit of nicotine, and it has some hemp in there and a little bit of caffeine, like a very, very small, almost negligible amount. And it's a troche that goes into your upper lip, makes your mouth blue. It's really, really interesting. So I paired the two, and boom, like it's a very noticeable difference. I feel a difference with the blue carnitine by itself. I notice a difference with Kenetik by itself, but the two together was a beautiful stack. And so I was like, okay, I got to ask these guys what they use as a stack. Do you have anything that you could add to that?
Well, I got to try that.
Yeah, that sounds really fascinating.
What's it called again, Josh?
It's
Blue.
blue Kenetik by Transcriptions. I'll hook you guys up with some samples of it so you can try it out. They have, like not only just the blue Kenetik. So blue Kenetik is the one that has nicotine, caffeine, CBD or hemp crystals in it with methylene blue. They also have a product called Just Blue, which is just the methylene blue by itself, and then they have another product that's a troche called Tro Calm, which is has some GABA, GABA and kava, and it's more of a relaxing, calming sensation. I tried that one as well because that's also kind of like a calm energy. And back to the point I was mentioning earlier about when to take it. One of the things that I think is cool about some of the ketone products on the market is that depending on when you take it, you can use it not only for a boost, but you can also use it to sleep. Like I mean, I don't know if you guys researched that on your product specifically, but there's a couple products out there that I've tried that list like taking it prior to bed, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, right? Like I would think that maybe it would keep me up, and I tried it, and it didn't keep me up. I wouldn't say that it necessarily made my sleep like dramatically better, but it didn't hurt it. So I was like, okay, now this kind of opened up the creative juices in my head on thinking about, well, what else can I do with it? So yeah.
I was going to say, I've noticed personally, ketones absolutely help the quality of sleep, my quality of sleep. And I measure it, obviously, and I notice that I get more deep and REM sleep, a higher percentage, typically. And what's interesting is that in that case, more isn't necessarily more either. Half a serving of Kenetik works just as well or better than a whole serving before bed for that. This is what I've found. I also have heard from folks who have trouble sleeping that it doesn't work for them. It actually keeps them up because their brain is going more. For me, that's not an issue, but we don't include that as a benefit because we've seen it go both ways with our customers, but it does for me personally. It really does help with sleep. In terms of your question about stacking, I love that idea, and I got to try the blue Kenetik. Ketones, and this is this is basic, but ketones plus a low glycemic carbohydrate for physical activity, for workouts, is perfect. Particularly if you're not on a ketogenic diet, because you've got the glucose and ketones as a dual fuel. Your body will use the ketones, preserve the glycogen in your muscles, and which gives you the extra glycogen if you're sprinting towards the finish line or charging up a hill or whatever that you need for those bursts of high intensity. So if you're doing a long bike ride or you're going on a long run, I would stack a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 carb ketone for sure. And and then the other basic one is I still drink coffee, and honestly, I don't drink as much, or I don't have a craving for as much when I'm drinking Kenetik. But a coffee and caffeine and ketones is actually a very nice combination as well. You're activating the sort of awakeness of that caffeine gives you, but then also the focus and kind of that in the zone mental state that ketones give you. So together they work very well.
So thank you for that. And Peter, I think this question here will be right up your alley because you are traditionally the food and beverage guy, right? So I have a friend that is in the food and beverage industry, and I've learned a lot about what goes into making drinks and testing it and getting it out to the public and blah, 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 blah. So I know a lot about that now. But what I wanted to ask you in terms of the drink itself, there are a subset of people out there that are sensitive to sugar alcohols. And, I'm just curious, like, what is your thoughts on, or what has gone into the sort of figuring out the best ones to use, and have you tried any versions without the sugar alcohols for those who might be sensitive? What are your thoughts on that?
We experimented with a lot of different sugars. Erythritol is a major sugar alcohol that we were trying with, but discovered that can give some GI distress, and our goal was really to eliminate all of that GI distress. Right now, we're using allulose as our sweetener in there. It is very effective, low cases of GI distress, and then mixed with that, we have the tiniest amounts of stevia. And the combination of those two is really able to bring a balance to the flavor. So you're getting, with this particular flavor that we have right now, you're getting that perfect balance of sweet and sour. And it really just works for us. And we've got a couple more flavors that we're rolling out soon. We've got a blackberry lemonade, a strawberry peach, and a watermelon lime. And we just were testing them out again the other day. And every time we would test them, we're like, all right, this is my new favorite. And then it'd be like, okay, time to try the watermelon. Oh, that one's better. And then it's strawberry peach. This one's the best. And I was like, I guarantee you, if we go back to the blackberry lemonade, we're going to say that one's our new favorite again, all over again. But what's something that's really interesting that you hinted at that I want to touch on is that my sort of little hack with Kenetik that we don't really advertise that might be useful for some listeners is that we're doing a study around alcohol and Kenetik and ketones and the benefits of ketones for overcoming cravings and withdrawal and the symptoms of a hangover. And so I know for me personally, during the holiday season, I had so many damn holiday parties to go to. And when you wake up, and even if you don't even have that much, the next day, you still have that little bit of brain fog there, that little bit of last night hanging over you. And I found that Kenetik clears that out right away. One serving of it, it gets your brain sharp again. And one of the reasons is because ketones are that preferred brain fuel. As you're consuming alcohol, your body's breaking that down, turning it into acetate, and your brain actually starts to use the acetate for fuel. And that kind of gives you that brain fogged feeling. But as they've done these PET scans and seen what the preferred fuel is, once you introduce ketones into the system, your brain is absorbing that, and it's reducing any of the withdrawal symptoms and cravings that people have the next day for alcohol. So seeing a lot of interesting results with that. We're working with a major university on that right now, and actually just had to send some product to NIH as well because it's going so well. So that's really
boom.
Yeah.
Boom. Thank you for interjecting that, because I think, most people, let's just put it this way, like a lot of people drink, right? And most people know what a hangover feels like. And for those people, they're almost willing to do anything to not feel a hangover, right? And a lot of times it's the classic, like, go and get, greasy food and, and hopefully what we call, quote unquote, soaking up the alcohol, which is obviously not happening. And I used to explain to people the whole first to burn. The body is going to use, or it's going to try to deal with the toxin that is alcohol first, and it stores everything else. So I always kind of encourage people to understand that and not really eat around, or if you are going to eat, make sure it's not like crappy foods. So to know that you guys have a solution for people who are hungover, that's amazing. And then on top of that, right, let's face it, with the other drinks that are out there, if you were to tell someone you could use it for a hangover, it might encourage you vomiting, right? Because it's so gross, right?
There's no ester if you're having a rough morning. Like, you might as well take that right above the toilet.
Right, exactly. So I think you guys have created something that's pretty cool, because, it does taste good. And The flavor that I tried, I believe, is the tropical citrus. It kind of tastes like a lemonade, and it's so good. And I would love nothing more than to be a guinea pig on your other flavors, because
Done.
I mean, I love this stuff. When you were talking about alcohol in the beginning, I didn't think you were going to go down the rabbit hole of hangovers. I thought you were going to talk about like mixing it as like a mixer, right? Because I know that this is what some people
Yeah.
have been doing. And in fact, there was a company that several months ago, they sent me, I think it's a beer. I can't drink beer. I have a gluten allergy, but they sent me a beer and like another, like I think it's like a gin and tonic type of drink, but is made with ketones. And I thought, oh, this is kind of fascinating because
Mm.
obviously people like to have a glass of wine or a beer or cocktail at night to kind of calm down. But what would it be like adding in Kenetik, right? Like this would be a better cocktail, I believe. And I also think about all of the gamers out there, and I think about all of the poker players out there, and the people who are, reverting to or resorting to, Red Bull, and I'm not bashing any of these companies, but like I now think in Kenetik, there's a much better fuel source that tastes good that would hopefully get you where you want to be and maybe make you perform better.
Well,
So
I'm going to let you in on a little secret that I wasn't going to mention, but since you just kind of like hit the nail on the head with it, like, here we go. So I did some personal testing with it so that tropical citrus flavor you're talking about, it's got orange, passion fruit, and pineapple. That's our blend that we're doing right there. I love passion fruit. It's so good in so many cocktails. I was like, I got to work that in there. But I started mixing it with, you've kind of got this lemon lime flavor going there. And, all the classic cocktails that use that, it's like a daiquiri with rum, margarita with tequila, a Collins with vodka or gin. So it's that flavor is kind of the base of a lot of classic cocktails. So I was like, let's see what this is like. So I, used it as the mixer with, a shot of one of those base liquors. And I was like, drinking it, I was like, okay, this tastes great. Like this is an enjoyable cocktail. And I'm feeling buzzy. I feel warm, but I don't feel intoxicated. Something's different here. I feel good, but I'm not impaired. And so with this researcher that we're working with, I mentioned this to them, and they did a little pilot study and, had their participants drink Kenetik 30 minutes before doing the actual, drinking of the alcohol and the measurement and everything like that. So you've got the baseline where they have their alcohol and it goes up to like 0.04, 0.05. And then they drank Kenetik 30 minutes beforehand on their next session the following week, 30 minutes beforehand, had that shot of vodka. Instead of going up to 0.04, 0.05, it stayed flat at 0, all the way across. Their BAC
whoa.
not
Wait, what?
increase.
Uh-oh.
How's that
You
work?
heard it here, folks. You
How's
heard
that
it
work?
here. Wait, that might be worth
understand.
repeating, my friend.
But we're trying to figure out what's going on there exactly and what's happening. But that result was shown over and over again with multiple participants in the study. So there's and then we did a further follow-up where they had the drink and then they had Kenetik afterwards 5 minutes later, and it reduced BAC levels by 50%. So we're really digging into the science now on what's happening there. Is it happening in the belly, in your stomach? Is it happening in the liver? Is it something in the brain? And like we're working on figuring all that out right now. But there's definitely a pronounced effect when you are drinking Kenetik with alcohol, and that's part of the reason too. It helps you recover so fast. So it's there's
Wow.
something there. There's more to come. This is going to be an ongoing study for years, and we're going to be applying for NIH grants and getting something interesting done with it.
Well, I would imagine that, like what we described, you guys described early on into this show, is that what ends up happening usually is that the system just works better, right? Everything in the kinetic chain, right? Everything throughout the kinetic chain in the brain just works better. So I would imagine that it's helping to to get rid of, the toxins quicker, maybe, and maybe that's part of it. But that is very fascinating, and I think that's a huge one. That's a mic drop right there, fellas.
Yeah, that's one working theory is that it's speeding up the metabolism of alcohol
Yeah.
in the liver, and so that it's not reaching the bloodstream. But like, it's hard to measure that. It's not like you can exactly get into the liver and see that the alcohol dehydrogenase is what breaks down alcohol in the liver. And so
Right.
you can't really, you'd have to take like a biopsy of that or something like that. Not something you really want to do.
Right.
But yeah, that's the working theory with it. And yeah, it's going to move on to a larger study.
Wow. I love it. Yeah, this has been extremely fascinating, and I would love to, just like stay on top of what you guys are doing, and I will. And obviously, like, as you guys come out with more stuff, like, would love to have you back on so we can talk more about it. And as you get more research, just keep me posted, because we can keep the community updated, because I imagine people are going to want to try out this amazing drink. And of course, for everyone listening and watching, I'm going to throw out my discount code and all that stuff, so you guys can get a discount when you decide to go and purchase. And we'll make sure that you know how to best do that. And Gordon will list all of the links and things like that in the show notes. But speaking of that, before we wrap up and before we go into our last questions, what do you guys see on the horizons, like for Kenetik? Like, where is it headed?
Well, we got the new flavors. We've also created an edible in gummy form, and so you can have eight gummy bears or gummy lightning bolts, or we haven't decided exactly what the shape will be, but something cool, and get the same serving, the same dosage as one serving of Kenetik in that edible form. So getting
Wow.
Getting into the food side of it a little bit, and whether we end up making a goo pack or something like that, because there's a lot of benefits for marathoners, triathletes, ultra runners, because you can only store so much glycogen in your system. So you have ketones on top. You have like a bigger fuel tank. So creating some products that's going to be catered to those communities as well. And as well as having right now, the concentrate bottle is 4 servings. We're going to make a single shot serving of the concentrate as well. So it's 2 ounces. You can get it through TSA. That's a big complaint we get from our CEOs. They're like, I got to fly to a board meeting. I want Kenetik with me, but like, I can't get it. Like, I'm not checking my bag. Are you crazy? Like, it's
right. Right.
So, so we're going to, have a smaller form size in the single shot serving. So you can just take it on the go and knock back 2 ounces and go rock and roll.
And does it have to be? Does it always have to be liquid? Can it be powder? Have you guys looked into that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, probably it's not practical to do Kenetik in powder form. Really, the only way to do that and keep it stable is by bonding the ketones to a salt, and then you've got ketone salt. So
ketone salt, yeah.
Yeah. So it'll stay in liquid form, but we are working on actually with some new exciting flavorings and sweeteners, working on an ultra concentrated version, which would allow us to get it into 1/4 of four times more concentrated than what we have right now. So that'll make it extra convenient as well, easier to carry around. So
I'm asking selfishly, whatever, because I'm going to be on tour soon again with Roger.
Yeah.
And I think our tour in Europe is approximately it's 80 days. So I'll be away for about 3 months, or no, it's more than that. Yeah, around 3 months. And I'm like, okay, I know he's already ordered the other. I won't mention the other one, but he already ordered the other one to have because he, like I said earlier, he doesn't want to be without it. But I imagine now, like taking him a gummy or taking him a a concentrate pack or something like that. So somehow, like if it's available, I'd love to, like when we talk offline, I'd love to be able to get that because yeah, it's going to be important to have it because I want to continue taking it. And I love, Devon, how you mentioned that there is no negative, there's no like what's the word called, adaptation or when
Adverse.
you, what is it
Tolerance.
called? Yeah, there is no tolerance, and in fact it kind of works the opposite way, right? And so that encouraged me when you mentioned that. I thought, oh, so I can take it every day, right? Great. And same thing for Roger, like he was only taking it because I suggested that he only do it before a show, but like why can't he do it every day?
Yeah.
So
In fact, it's better. 100%.
okay,
Yep.
well said, well said.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll definitely hook you up. We'll make sure you're well stocked for your tour.
Much appreciated. Yeah. And we're at this point where I want to ask the last two questions of the show. And before I do that, I want to make sure that you guys got a chance to kind of mention everything that you came onto the show to discuss. Is there anything else that we should touch on before we wrap up?
I feel like we could do a whole sequel to this show with all the things we could talk about. But no, we covered a lot of good ground here. I really, really had a good time. Appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking already, like the wheels are turning, and I haven't even drank my drink yet. I have one more in the refrigerator, so I've been saving it. I've been saving it because I'm gonna crush a crazy workout when we finish. But
Nice.
the thing that I like to ask when it comes to this show, when we get towards the end, is there's two questions I like to ask. And the first question is, and both of you can answer this, let's just go one for each of you. But what are your top pet peeves? What are a couple things that get under your skin that just drive you sort of crazy when it comes to life?
I'll go first, Devon, while you think of yours. For me, it's sort of the lazy people that cheat the system and don't put in the work, and then have this expectations that they get to work, ride off your coattails and all of your hard energy and efforts that you've put in. And but you ask them to help and they just won't do it. So that's who drives me nuts. Some very kind people too, but it's just like, I like people that work hard and really earn what they put into it. And people who don't have that same ethic, sometimes they drive me a little bonkers.
It sounds like they need some more Kenetik.
Yeah, right.
All right, Devon.
That's a good one. It's actually similar to mine, but the first thing that came to mind for me when you asked that question was when folks just blame. And I think it was one of the Stoics actually that talked about how an ignorant person or a small-minded person is inclined to blame someone else or something else for things that go wrong. And for me, that is like the moment you do that is the moment you stop thinking, you stop trying to understand what happened and solving a problem or improving. And it's the enlightened person that thinks about what they could do differently. So that for me is one of my biggest pet peeves, because and particularly when I'm talking to that person or trying to work through something, the moment blame comes out is the moment that conversation just goes downhill.
Thank you for that, both of you. Both of those are really good, and I love pointing this out. It's why it's been a staple in the show, because I think that it really allows everyone else that is watching or listening to the show, it allows them to kind of relate to each of us better, right? When we understand what gets under people's skin, I think it should allow for every one of us to learn how to best deal with each of you better, right? So let's say that you've got a company of 100 people and they happen to listen to the show because Devon and Peter are on the show. There might be a handful of people in there that are like, oh, you know what? I might need to change how I act around these guys because they don't like that, right? And it's just kind of a way to kind of nudge it in there. It's like a passive aggressive way of getting people to behave better. So
It's
that's why I do that.
thought-provoking too. I really appreciate that question. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so for the last question, definitely one of my favorites. What are you most grateful for? What's something that comes to mind when it comes to gratitude?
My health.
For me, it's people around me. It's the community, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, people in the neighborhood. I just love to always make myself have the time to stop and talk to people and see how they're doing. And it doesn't matter who they are or what they are. Just like I always love being able to find, and there's something in the human spirit, whether they're a CEO or a janitor. Like I just love being able to talk and connect with people.
Beautiful.
And that comes through knowing Peter. I mean, it's true. You see him light up. Nobody can work a room, although that doesn't quite do it justice, because he's got so much energy, and when it comes to just meeting and talking with people. For me, the first thing that came to my mind was honestly my health. I'm getting over this cold right now. Grateful that I am with it enough to talk with you today. That I do have at least a semblance of a voice. It's a lot better than it was literally an hour ago. So I got lucky there. But yeah, grateful to have spent this time with you guys.
Beautiful. Okay, and so to wrap up, could you let people know how to finally get their hands on Kenetik? And I will say this before you rattle those things off. These gentlemen and the company have been gracious enough to give the listeners of this show, the followers of this show, and all the things I do, the discount code of Josh15. And Gordon is going to obviously put all that stuff in the show notes. But when you go to the website, just use discount code Josh15, and there's a bunch of stuff you'll get from that. So can you guys let the audience know what the socials are and the website and all that stuff?
Absolutely. We're at, you can find us on social channels at Drink Kenetik, and Kenetik is spelled Kenetik. And our website is drinkkenetik.com, and you can find our ready to drink and our concentrate versions there.
Awesome. And on the socials, I think it's also Drink Kenetik as well, right?
Yes, it's also, same as the site, Drink Kenetik.
Drink Kenetik. Awesome.
Sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be the first to hear about when those new flavors and new forms come out. Yeah,
and I will say this, whether you guys use this as a part of your research or not, if anyone is interested in coming up with some anecdotal studies themselves, let us know, because I plan on doing that. Like I want to do some tests. Like I have a lot of things that I do here. Like my apartment is like my lab. And I utilize electrical muscle stimulation, and I have all kinds of like really cool gadgets that should allow for me to be able to see a difference between what I'm taking and what I'm not taking. And so if anybody is interested in joining me on that, let me know. And I'm really curious about the whole alcohol thing. I'm not a big drinker myself. I mean, I very rarely drink. I can count on one hand how many times I drink in a year. But when and if I do, and I guess the reason why I don't do that is because I don't like how I feel when I finish drinking usually. But this might make it a little bit more interesting, So anyway, that's that. I want to thank you guys for your time. the audience, I want to thank you for your time. If you've got questions, let us all know. You know how to find these guys. You know how to find me. And yeah, fuel your life with Kenetik. This is Josh signing out. Peace.
Simply walk the talk.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seat belts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.